Afternoon, good morning, good evening, traders, depending on what time you're viewing this video. This is Ed FX Trader for another video lesson. And what we're going to be focusing today is on drawing trend lines, right? And the three types of trend lines that exist. Okay, before we begin, just a disclaimer, please understand that there is risk involved in trading the forex market, that you should not invest money that you cannot afford to lose. Always keep equity management in mind. Understand that I am not licensed nor regulated by the Trading Commodity Advisor or the Financial Services Commission here in Jamaica. These videos are for educational purposes only. Alright, past performance is not indicative of future result. Understand the risk and reward, and that the decision to trade or not to trade is up to you. Having said that, let us begin. Now, when the market moves, it moves in waves, and we can use trend lines to divide the market into buy zone or sell zone. So if I should draw a line here, just let's say, right, this section here would be my buy zone. You would notice that once the market is above this trend line, it goes up. So my focus will be on buying. Whenever the market breaks through the trend line, then my focus is on selling. So this here would be my buy zone, right? And over here would be my sell zone. Okay, so I want to buy in the buy zone and I want to sell in the sell zone. But one of the key things in being able to do this is knowing how to draw your trend lines. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate right here. Okay, let me just clear this screen. Now, whenever you notice that the market is moving up, like in this case, it's slowly going up, we want to draw a trend line to monitor the upward movement. Now, when you're going to draw an uptrend line, you want to find the lowest point and the highest point. So for our example here, my video just shifted, hold on, sorry about that. For my video here, the lowest point on the chart would be right here, right down here, and the highest point would be up here, right, based on the chart that we're currently looking at. So this will be the low point and this will be the highest point. Now what we do when we're drawing trend lines, that after identifying the lowest point on the chart and the highest point, we're now going to draw our trend line. Okay, now this is how this will work. You'll go to your trend line tool and you will begin at the lowest point, and your aim is to draw a trend line. So I'm going to extend first out the trend line, and then I'm going to slowly bring it up to when it touches the first candle, right? So we do not ever draw a trend line through the wick or through any candles. So if I draw my trend line from here, I'm going to extend it out, and then I'm going to slowly come up until the first candle it touches, right? So it touches this candle here, this candle right here, and so this will be where this trend line ends. I'm going to extend it, right? This trend line is referred to as your long-term trend line. Right? So this trend line will be your long-term trend line. Okay? So this is your long-term trend line. Then you will draw another trend line starting at the candle, the first candle that you are touched when you draw your long-term trend line. So in this case, we will start right at this candle here, right? Keep in mind, we're going to do the same thing. This is right, that this is the highest point, right? So from this now becomes the low point, the lowest point. You extend your trend line, and I'm going to slowly carry it up again until it touches the first trend line, and from you can see there, then it touches that. So this will be what is called my outer trend line. This is my outer trend line. This is my outer trend line. And let me just edit this here. My long-term trend line. Right. Now, notice, and before I go on any further, notice that I did not draw the trend line through any of these candles that was going up from the lowest point to the highest point, right? Now, the reason why the trend line is through these candles is because, you know, we had went back, right? But I'm going to go to the live market and demonstrate this again, right? So at the time when we're viewing the chart, this would have been the lowest point, and up here would have been the highest point, all right, at the time. So let me just, I could carry it about, let's just see, we could carry it about there. Okay. But the next thing now that we do after you draw your, let me just put it back in the center, after you draw your long-term trend line and your outer trend line, you're going to draw another trend line. All right, and that will be called your inner trend line. Now, the inner trend line, the main focus of the inner trend line is to go up to the highest point without crossing or drawing the trend line through the highest point candle. So this candle formed the highest point. So my trend line now will go again, right, from the last point that I touch. Now, this will be the last point that I touch, but because it will be very similar to the outer trend line, we're not going to start there. Instead, what we're going to do is start at a point whereby instead of starting even here, because here we'll just only go up to here, we are going to start at this point. That's because this point, right, will take me all the way up to the highest point of the current chart that we're looking at, right, which was this point. So this trend line will go from this low here to the highest point, right, and that will form my inner trend line. Okay, so sorry, let me close this. Let me here, and this will be my inner trend line. Inner trend line. Okay, so I have my long-term trend line, my outer trend line, and my inner trend line. And the reason why we do this is that if I go back here, I want you to understand that when we first draw our trend line, let's say the market is right here, right? This here, this candle right out here would be my highest point, and this would be my lowest point. So I would draw the trend line that would have connected this low point to this candle right here. That would have formed the first trend line. Okay, so this would have made up the first trend line right here. Just put a circle there, right there. Okay, that would have been the first trend line. Okay, now move that. The market continues to move up. Okay, the market continues to move and it continues to move, and as it moves you draw a different trend line, right? So one trend line can't do. You have to, as the market moves, you have to monitor the movement, the upward movement of the market, and draw your trend line correspondingly, right? I'm going to demonstrate this. So this in the uptrend would have been your long-term, your outer, and your inner trend line. Okay, now this is for your uptrend lines. Now we're going to focus on drawing your downtrend line. And we're going to do something similar. So let me clear the screen. Okay. Now as I go along, feel free to take screen prints, as I normally encourage you to do. Right, just do a print screen of what is happening. I'm now going to draw a downtrend line, and let's say that the market is right here. When I'm drawing my downtrend line, I want to find the highest point, and this time I'm just going to use a vertical line. So this here would be my highest point, and right here would be my lowest point, about right there. Okay. Okay. So I have my highest point here and I have my lowest point. Okay. My trend line will go from the highest point. Okay. Let me just move this here so we can see it. Right. My trend line will go from the highest point, which is here, extended out till it touches the first candle. Right. Then I'm going to extend this. Right. Let me just remove these horizontal lines now, since we have identified the highest point and the lowest point. Right. And then my next trend line will start from the first touch going down to the lowest point without crossing any candle, and it will go from here. Notice that when I draw the trend lines, I do not draw the trend lines through the candle, okay, through any candle. So this will have two trend lines. This would be my inner trend line and this will be my outer trend line, right? So this outer trend line just monitors the downward movement, right? Once the market remains below this trend line, it will continue to go down, right? So our focus will be on selling, right? So this section here would be my sell zone, and over here would be my buy zone. So once the market crosses over here, then my focus is on buying, okay? And a simple methodology like this will help you to monitor the movement of the market and knowing when to buy and when to sell. Whenever the market breaks, right, the inner trend line, that should tell you that the market may move further up, and so you want to be focusing on exiting your trade. So right here the market continues to remain in the sell zone, and it remains in the sell zone, and it remains in the sell zone. Now at this point, what we would have done is simply adjust our trend lines. Okay, we'll just adjust our trend line. And once the market remains at boom, right here, the market has now broken the downtrend line. It have moved from the sell zone and it is now into the buy zone. Okay, and so our focus will be now on buying, and then what we will do is focus on drawing an uptrend line. As you can see, when the market broke the downtrend line, it moved from the sell zone, it entered into the buy zone, and we'll draw a uptrend line to monitor that. Right, so we no longer would have monitored this downward movement, and this now would be my buy zone, and this now would be my sell zone. And as long as the market remains in the buy zone, our focus will be on buying. Okay, and then when it crosses into the sell zone, our focus is on selling. Right, I'm going to go to the live market right now. Let me just clear this. Let's go to the live market, and we're going to do this right in the live market, focusing on the euro US dollar. Right, this is a live market. Right, I compress my chart, right, and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, this is the highest point up here. Just this will be the highest point right up here, and this would be the lowest point down here. So clearly the market is making lower lows and lower highs. It's going down. Okay, now having identified the highest point and the lowest point, what I'm now going to focus on is drawing my trend line. So again, I am going to draw a line going out. Let me just move this from here. I'm just going to draw a line going out, and then the first space where it touches, I'm going to stop the first candle that it touches, and bam. So that will be one trend line. Then, right, the last place the market touches is right here. But if I draw a trend line right here, you can see that it will be similar to the outer, to this long-term trend line. Sorry. So instead, I'm going to start from this highest point, still keeping in mind my lowest point. I cannot draw the trend line through the candles. This will be incorrect. We do not draw a trend line through the candle. We extend the trend line, and then we go until the first candle it touches, which will be here. Okay, so this trend line would be my outer trend line. Then my inner trend line, let me just zoom in. My inner trend line will be focusing on this right here. So this will now become my highest point, and right that this candle is my lowest point. I draw a trend line through here, and before this would be incorrect. We don't draw a candle here, right? So you're probably wondering, well, how am I drawing candles? Am I drawing the trend line through the candles here? And the reason being is that right here, let me explain this, zoom in here. This candle is your stop point. This is my lowest point. So my trend line, my inner trend line, has to be drawn right before I reach the last candle, before I reach this lowest point. Let me zoom in here, right? So because this is the lowest point, my trend line will not going to be drawn through any candle before this lowest point, and the trend line will stop right there, right? This before I reach this lowest point. if I drew my trend line here, it will be incorrect, because you're probably thinking, well, I just said to you, hold on, well, my battery is going, sorry about that. Just plug in. I just said to you that your trend line should not be drawn through any candle. So you're probably saying, well, how is it that I drew my trend line through those candles going up? Okay. And what I want you to realize is this. Let's just look at this again. If you start here and you draw your candles out and you stop at the first candle it meets, what makes this incorrect is that your trend lines are always drawn, in this case it's a downtrend line, with respect to the highest point and the lowest point, right, at the chart that you're currently looking at, right? Now, this was the lowest point down here, not this candle here. So my trend line, especially my inner trend line, has to be drawn with respect to the lowest point, which would be right here, because this is the lowest candle. What we now say is that this would be the sell zone with respect to this inner trend line, and this will be the buy zone with respect to this outer, with this inner trend line. So right here, this would be the sell zone, right? And then this over here will be the buy zone with respect to this inner trend line. Okay, please message me, post any comments that you have. If you have any further questions, anything that you're not sure about, watch this video several times just to get the concept of it, and then if you have any questions, feel free to ask, email me or send me a comment right on the video, right? So hopefully this helped you to understand your long-term trend line, right, which is this long-term trend line here, your outer trend line and your inner trend line. Okay, all right, have a good evening.